All right, guys. Nick Saban, Alabama head coach, the GOAT, arguably the greatest college football head coach of all time, has retired. So today we're going to be taking a look at 10 candidates that could be the next Alabama head coach. I'm already hearing connections to some names from what I've seen, and the leading candidate might surprise you, actually. So we're going to go down. We're going to break down this list. I'm going to give you my prediction to who they hire and who I would hire. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's break it down top to bottom. Dan Lanning, Oregon head coach, who I am seeing right now is the leading candidate, surprisingly, to replace Nick Saban. I'm surprised to see his name at the top of the list, and sounds like that's who they're trying to get. The reason I'm kind of surprised to see this, Dan Lanning is a younger head coach as far as on this list is concerned, but Oregon, I think, is kind of a rotating door, a factory where almost like similar to LSU, no matter who you put in there, they're probably going to win no matter what. So I'm questionable on this fit of Dan Lanning at Alabama, but that looks like it's probably their leading candidate right now. Next up, Dabo Swinney, Clemson head coach. If this would have happened 5 years ago, Dabo would probably be the leader in the clubhouse. Dabo has Alabama ties, did play for Alabama as a receiver back in the day. So obviously he'd want to see Alabama win. This is probably who I would hire. Possibly we'll get to that a little later. Next up, Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss head coach, has been around the block, went to Saban Academy at Alabama, came back to Alabama after he, kind of lost his head coaching duties at USC, at Tennessee, came to Alabama to be the OC for Saban, turned that into a head coaching job at FAU. Now he's at Ole Miss and really doing impressive things at Ole Miss. So does have some ties there. Next up, Steve Sarkisian, Texas head coach, another Alabama OC with ties to Alabama. Kind of went to Saban Academy as well. Next up, Kalen DeBoer, Washington head coach. The hottest name in the sport right now. Probably the dude wins wherever he goes. Really has Washington humming right now. Next up, Mike Norvell, Florida State head coach. All right, he's also been at Memphis, has got Florida State back on the right track. Didn't make the playoff at Florida State this year. Could he move to Bama? That way he can make the playoff. Next up, Glen Schumann, Georgia defense coordinator, has ties to Alabama, graduated from Bama, did coach at Bama, was the linebacker coach there under Kirby Smart and Saban. So definitely has some ties there. Next up, James Franklin, Penn State head coach, won a ton of ball games at Penn State at the moment. So definitely could be on the radar. Next up, Marcus Freeman, one of the youngest head coaches at a kind of premier program, Notre Dame head coach, was the DC there at Notre Dame, and then got promoted to head coach after Brian Kelly left LSU. Last but not least here, Demeco Ryans, Houston Texans head coach, did play for Alabama, so that's where those ties come in. So full disclosure, before I kind of break down this list a little more, I think Alabama could probably hire anybody in the country right now, minus probably Kirby Smart, because I think Kirby Smart's where he wants to be. He's at Georgia. That's where he's from. That's where he played. He's stuck at Georgia. Everybody else, I think, almost is a potential candidate here, minus, probably like Harbaugh. But any candidate that you can think of that they might be interested in is probably interested in Alabama. This is the premier job. Saban has got it on track. It wasn't necessarily before he got there, but right now this is the job if you're wanting to move up. So looking at this list a little more, we'll cross it out in a second. I don't think Demeco Ryans is a realistic candidate. I just don't see – didn't mean to do that. I just don't see him leaving. He made the playoffs with the Texans, won his division. You don't just go down to the NFL to college by choice. So I think he's off the list. All right, next up, looking at this list, to break it down, I don't think James Franklin is a realistic candidate. He's been in the SEC before as the Vanderbilt head coach, and yeah, that's just not happening. Next up, I'm going to cross off Marcus Freeman here. Hasn't won enough ball games at Notre Dame for me to kind of justify hiring him at Alabama. All right, next I'm going to cross off this list. Glen Schumann, I like the ties to Bama. That is interesting. If you played at Bama, went to school at Bama, he didn't play. But if you went to school at Bama, you've been a coach there, you want to see them succeed. Definitely an interesting name, but I think that's just too big of a jump. All right, next one I'm going to cross off here, Mike Norvell. All right, so I kind of had these in order anyway. But Mike Norvell, Florida State head coach, I think he might make a leap eventually, but I think he's set at Florida State right now, and I don't think Alabama would have interest in him just yet. I think they'd get somebody a little better, a little more consistent. All right, so next I'm going to cross off this list. All right, so if I was doing this hiring process, I would probably come down to Kalen DeBoer and Dabo Swinney, to be honest with you. If I was doing it, I don't think it will, but that's who I would come down to. Dabo has Alabama ties. I know he gets crapped on a lot for, how he's not the coach he used to be, but I still think Dabo's a top 5 head coach, and he has ties to Alabama. He would really want to see them succeed. If he's won national championships at Clemson, imagine what he could do at Alabama. Just saying. All right. Now, I know it's a different game now, but anyways, it would definitely come down to him and Kalen DeBoer for me. Kalen DeBoer, however you say it, has won a ton of ball games at other levels. Now he's got Washington humming, and like I said, would have him in my top 2. I don't think Alabama will, though, because he doesn't necessarily have Bama ties. And it just doesn't seem like he's a name on the radar at the moment, but would definitely be on my radar, so I'm going to have to mark him off. All right, so these next 3 guys, Dabo Swinney, Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, all have Alabama ties. Dan Lanning does not, but like I said, he appears to be the leading candidate at the moment. Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian would definitely make interesting prospects because they both have been Bama's OC. Both came back to Saban to kind of help groom them to become a better head coach after they had misfires at both of them at USC, actually. And, Saban kind of got them back on track and helped them become better head coaches in the long run. But Steve Sarkisian, I haven't seen enough from him at Texas just yet, consistency-wise, to justify making this jump. But I think Alabama definitely could be interested in there. All right, next up, Lane Kiffin. I think would be an interesting hire. He has Ole Miss back really as good as they've been, has double-digit win seasons back-to-back here, looking like a playoff contender next year, has them at number 1 in the transfer portal. But I don't know. Could he win at Bama? I don't know. Lane Kiffin has won ball games right now, but also I feel like he could be one that could just completely wreck your program out of nowhere, So I'm going to cross Kiffin off the list. All right, so long story short here, all right, these are the 2 candidates that Dabo Swinney is who I would hire. Dan Lanning is who I think they're going to hire. All right, so take that as you will. Dabo Swinney, like I said, I think he can win a ton of ball games at Bama. I know it's questionable how he approaches the transfer portal at the moment, but I think he can win national championships at Bama, keep them at a level they're at right now. Dan Lanning, I'm not the biggest fan of the hire at Alabama if that does happen. But again, it sounds like he is the leading candidate at the moment. But again, I think just questionable on even Mario Cristobal won games at Oregon. So I'm just saying, I think that's like a rotating door of whoever's there is going to win ball games. And while he's won ball games at Oregon, he hasn't won the national championship. You know what I mean? So I find pause right there on taking that. But I think, again, Alabama is going to hire Dan Lanning. It sounds like, from what I've heard, it sounds like he's their guy. And when Alabama comes calling, you don't just turn it down. So I think they're going to hire Oregon's head coach, Dan Lanning. I think this moves pretty swiftly probably here. I think it'll move pretty quick, and I think Dan Lanning is going to be their guy. I would hire Dabo or Kalen DeBoer, but lean towards Dabo. But that is my thoughts on this list. Who would you add to this list? Who would you take off? Who do you think they will hire? Who do you think they should hire? Let me know. Comment down below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe.